Ladies, welcome to the podcast. So good to have you. I should say Krystal and Steph are joining us here. How are you both?
Good. Really good. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, absolutely. You guys are my first sisters.
Oh, really?
For over 100 episodes. I'm like,
wow.
I'm digging this. Like, this is, it's awesome. I'm so excited to sort of explore both of your journeys because, I mean, obviously, yes. Krystal, you've got three little bubs, well, not so little anymore.
Yes.
How old are your children?
So I've got Vienna, who's 12, Harlow, who is 9, and Avery, who's 5.
Yes. So your little tribe.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, Steph as well, you're in transition, you were sort of saying at the moment as far as, work and where you're going to live and all that good stuff. Yeah. And are you sort of dating or seeing anyone? Or?
Not at the moment, so we might have to put like my Instagram tag so can come and follow. No, not at the moment, but yeah, we're like polar opposites in that sense. Yeah. She's family, I guess, I'm career.
Yes.
All kind of have gone down that path, so no kids, no partner at this stage.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's kind of like, the world is your oyster, which is a kind of a nervous but exciting place to be as well, I'm assuming, with sort of working out with what's ahead of you. So in introducing you both, I've got Krystal here, who's the content creator and founder of House of Harvey, having created a large Instagram community where she shares fashion, lifestyle, interiors and styling content. And as we mentioned, she lives here in Melbourne with her beautiful family. And Steph, who's lived in London in your 20s, that's a vibe, I feel like. So how long were you in London for?
2 and a bit years.
Yeah. How'd you go with the weather though?
Big vibe. It didn't bother me then because I was a bit of a night owl at that part of my life. So I spent a lot of my waking hours between 10 a.m. and 4 a.m. So it didn't really bother me.
There wasn't an option.
And plus, if you wanted the sun, you just jet off to Mykonos.
It's not so shabby. And then you moved back to Oz when Krystal had Vienna, and then had been living in Sydney for 5 years, and now you're just working out, where to from here, which is so exciting. I want to start at the start of, I guess, your journeys in that, as parents, a lot of the way in which you parent, obviously, and even, as auntie, etc., a lot of your childhood stuff can come up from that, right? And can really determine what type of parent you end up being. What was your upbringing like? I should also mention you're both very close. You're best friends. So obviously there was. Have you always had that strong bond? What was your childhood like?
How much time do you have?
In a nutshell.
So our parents separated when I was 7 and Steph was 3. And I think since then we kind of only really had each other. So I think that's kind of where our closeness began. Our mum obviously had to work, 5 jobs. It was that kind of thing to support us. And we went from a very big house when we were with our dad to a very, very small house with just the 3 of us, our mum and my sister and I. So we became close, I think, but obviously we are 4 years apart, so we're not twins. Everyone thinks we're twins. Everyone thinks we're twins, but we are 4 years apart. So, there was parts of our lives where we obviously did do different things, especially when I was 18 and she was 14 or whatever, although she did...
I was still going to the
overage clubs with me anyway.
Our journeys went like that though.
Exactly.
We were doing different things and then we were doing things.
There was a period of time where we probably, not that we weren't close, as in, we didn't hate each other or anything, but we were just doing very different things. And I think that was obviously when I met my husband around there, and then that's when Steph went to London and did her thing. And then we've come back together in kind of adulthood, I guess, since I had my kids. And it's just a safe space, we know each other better than anyone. Like Steph knows me better than my husband knows me, I think. We spend a lot of time together and it's just happy. It's a happy time when we're together, so it's good.
Yeah. And I guess I wonder how, with your parents separating, how did that sort of inform your relationships moving forward? Were you... I don't know, did it, in meeting your partner, were you like, I'm going to be mindful of these things because I had that experience? I think so. I think that is a whole huge kettle of fish, childhood trauma that everyone, I'm sure, has their own version of. But I think for me, it wasn't, I don't think it was as forward in my brain back then as I guess it is now. Getting, into my 30s, my mid-30s and then my late 30s, that's when I've wanted to really dive into that and
think about why I do things and what happened in my childhood, and you know, why do I think like that, or why am I responding like that, especially with my own kids. I just knew that I wanted to find a partner who loved me at the end of the day, who was going to be there with me. And our family, our mum and our dad, it was a violent situation. So I knew that that's obviously what I didn't want. It had to be something that was very different to that. But there's a lot of things, I think, from our childhood that would be the reason why we acted a certain way with, you know, partners that we had growing up, or boyfriends, or that kind of thing. I think when you go through a divorce as a kid, and especially back then, it wasn't like now where it's, you know, you worry about the kid's mental health. You know, I think back then it was like, well, you'll be fine. You know, you visit your dad on the weekend and that's it. So I think there was a period of time where, yeah, you know, I probably dated boys just because they liked me for a second. You know what I mean? Just to get that little bit of attention from a man. But it worked out in the end, I think, for me anyway, which is a good, you know, is a good outcome. But it was a lot. Like, it has been a lot.
I think we had very different experiences as well, like me being 3 and Krystal being 7, and then like experiencing life through a divorce at that time. Like, even now I think it's apparent, like Krystal has a family and I don't. And I mean, not saying that every younger child of a divorced family doesn't have a partner, but I guess what I experienced through not having a father growing up has affected my relationships as I've gotten older in a very different way. And like, it was the best thing that could have happened to us at the time. Like, I think if our parents were still together, we would be completely different people. And like, obviously it wasn't the right thing for our mum. But yeah, I think you experience it differently depending on your age, and also like we just experienced it very differently. And I think
you take
that's
from
an outcome that's
how you take different
now.
Things from it.
Yes.
You experience, I guess, the same thing, but you just take different things from it. But we're also very different, even though we're very the same, we're very different. I think we were very different as kids. So, you know, like Steph said, it's what you remember. Like, there might be things, and I'm sure there is, we've discussed it, that I remember as if it was yesterday, that Steph would be like, I don't remember that. You know, I don't remember that.
There's a lot of disassociation in childhood for me. Krystal will be like, oh, don't you remember that time that we did this? And I'm like, no, like not at all. Like, there's whole chapters of life that I can't really remember.
Almost to protect yourself,
100%.
Instinctively.
And I think to our mum, we'll retell a lot of things. Like, say when I was growing up, you know, I was 7, 8, whatever. Steph was a baby, so I would hear my mum telling a friend, for example. So I don't even know sometimes if my memories are my memories or if they're just my memory of my mum telling the story. Does that make sense?
It's amazing, like how much we grow up fast in situations.
In a second,
the eldest,
definitely.
You know, trying to be that protector of the, you know, the family in a way. You grow up fast. Are there things that you're mindful of now with your kids that you're like, oh, I had to really, you know, grow up fast. I don't want them to feel that.
There is. It's funny because I mean, I don't want to say I'm a strict mum, but I am quite, you know, like, make your bed. You know, what's the big deal? Make your bed. I don't see why that's hard. Or those, pick up your clothes. But there is moments where I sometimes will lose my shit. And then I think that little bit after, like, they're just kids. You know, she's only 12. Like, even though to me, I'm like, you're 12, and I think that's older, then I step away and I'm like, she's only 12. Like, just give them a break. And I think I am a lot more mindful of that now in the past probably 5 years, I think. Just wanting them to have a childhood and be kids, you know, just do silly things. Because I think, I know I hear it a lot and I do it a lot, where you'll be like, how old are you? Like, act your age. And it's like, well, they're 12 and 9 and 5. Like, they are acting their age. But we just expect them to be adults.
Totally. And I think when you've got a lot going on as well, personally, you're like, I'm doing all these other things outside parenthood, which you are, right? There's that element of it. And as you're talking, I reflect back to my childhood, and you know, my parents were essentially immigrants to this country. I mean, my mum was born here but left at the age of 4 to go to Greece. My dad's Nigerian, and you know, they came and it was like you know, working, business, financial stress, all of this, and I was the eldest of 3, and similarly, I had to grow up quick, smart, and look, like, there's no stuffing around, like, just do what you need to do, mate, fix your bed, there's no, like, ums and ahs, so I feel as though, it's, as you're talking, I'm like, oh my God, sometimes with my kids, I have this expectation, like, come on, like, get on with it, because that's what I knew.
Yes, exactly.
But actually, like, kids be kids, right?
Kids. It's funny because as you're talking, I'm trying to remember moments of my childhood. And I think I actually don't feel like I have many memories. So I remember before 7, when my parents were married, but I feel like I don't have any memories of just being like a child. I feel like from 7, I remember almost being a teenager. You know, I don't remember just playing.
And like the weight of responsibility and things like that.
And because our mum had to work so much to support us, and I mean, she did an incredible job, like hats off to her, she's amazing. We had to do a lot of stuff ourselves. So, you know, there were times when we'd make our own dinner at 10 or whatever to get ourselves to school and home from school because she was working. So yeah, it's funny because I don't really remember times when we were playing. I just remember playing with Barbies, but I don't know how old I was at that point.
And what about you, Steph? Like, do you feel that work ethic that you have, that drive that has been with you forever, stems from that experience as well, and your mum?
Yeah, definitely 100%. Like, mum was always a career woman, and it was just about, you know, like, for her, obviously, a very different situation. Like, she needed to support us, whereas I only have myself that I'm supporting. But definitely I've always gone down that career path and just, you know, independent woman, strong. I even, you know, through doing therapy and counselling, I've like broken down those barriers of, you know, I think I show up as very masculine, and sometimes I put that to be the reason why I haven't found someone, or my past partners have been quite feminine, you know, like I guess in their energy. And I'm, you know, now at this age, I'm trying to be a little bit more feminine and lean into that and not be so, I can do everything, you don't need to, like, don't come in the kitchen, don't do, like, you know, I'm that person. Like, I lived, I had housemates in Sydney, and my first housemate, I remember like peering over the couch, looking in the kitchen when he'd be like cutting things. Which chopping board are you using? Like, which knife? Like, that energy and stuff is just not what I kind of want to bring to a relationship.
But that's what we grew up with.
But that's what we grew up with our mum. Just, you know, she had to be in control of everything.
Yeah, she was the mum, the dad, she was, you know, and that's exactly right how I think we are, even in friendship groups. We've got it, we'll organise it, like, you know, we just had to be the ones in
just
control.
Like, take the reins, right?
I can so relate to that. And as you're sort of talking, Steph, I was thinking, you know, obviously, you know, women in their 30s often, and I've got a number of friends as well who are sort of single and living their life to their fullest and very career focused like yourself. Has the thought of freezing eggs or anything like that come to your mind? Because I know for them it certainly has. I was just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, 100%. Look, 35 for me was like the scary age. At the start of the year when I turned 35, I was like, what is going on? Like, how am I 5 years to 40 when I feel 26? I feel like I look maybe 27, I don't know. But you know what I mean? I was like, I think it was my scary age. And look, I've spoken about it with a lot of my friends over the last few years, but it was probably this year the first time where I said to myself, I should go get something checked. I think for me, in terms of what that looks like for the future, it's different, I guess, for all women. But I've always known within myself that a family for me is what I want. Like, I don't want a child per se. I want a family. So unless I have someone that I can raise a child with, and I know that that's not promised, like, it's not like you marry someone and then they're stuck with you for life. But I guess for me, unless I've got someone that's gonna, you know, do half of the things with me. Like, I don't even want to get a dog on my own. So, you know, in terms of like responsibility, I think for me, like, that's why I would think about freezing my eggs. So I did go and get the test. I got like the blood test and stuff around August this year. I found a really good doctor in Sydney, if anyone wants a recommendation. She's amazing. She was really helpful. And I got positive news back from just the results in terms of my egg count and I guess how things are looking down there. But I didn't have the opportunity to go any further, just like due to my move and needing to come back to Melbourne. But yeah, I guess that's positive. And the next step for me, maybe next year, we'll be looking at freezing those eggs. It just, it's hard. It's such a hard thing, I think, for women. Like, there's so much burden. I mean, I feel like it should be free for starters.
Yeah.
I feel like we should get like way more support, or it should almost be just something that is a natural thing that's part of, you know, going to get a vaccine or whatever it is. Like, I just don't know why the pressure of it is left on every individual to just decide. But yeah, that pressure is a lot. I really feel like it is a lot. And I know so many women that are going through the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, you could be, you know, in your 40s as a guy. Look, just no way would even
it's
appreciate
not even a
that
thought.
pressure. I remember when I was living in Sydney, I was with a guy, I was 27, I was like, this is the guy I'm going to marry, moved from Melbourne for it, like, it was fantastic. Then he breaks my heart after living with him for a year, and I was devastated. Thank God he did, because it was a destructive relationship, but I was hanging on to him for dear life, because I'm like, I'm 27, I've got my timeline. Had I had a baby with him, then we would have lasted 6 months and finished, right? So anyway, I go then to Bondi, living my best life for a couple of years there, you know, on boats, just loving life, the holiday facade that is Bondi. And then I remember I was 29, nearly turning 30 soon, and I went, okay, and I had a lot of girlfriends there that I'd met through Sydney people, and they were, a lot of them were mid-30s to 40s, looked like they're 23, bombshells, like on boats, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's just amazing. And I could see myself being the next 10 years doing the same thing, but then in the back of my mind I thought, I'm going to sort of reassess things. I feel I need to step out of the Bondi bubble and go back to Melbourne at least to kind of recalibrate, because I feel like I've been on this holiday for 7 years, but also because I'm mindful that I'm single and I don't have a partner. I would like to have one, and it almost becomes this active thing that you're having to think about, which is so unfair as a female versus a guy who's just like, well, kicking about. When it happens, you know. Like,
it's crazy. Like what you've just explained is like so real for being in Sydney, but also I think like for many women to just choose like different paths. But even like some other things that came up was, you know, I left a job after 7 years, and then after I left that job, the first thing in my mind was like, oh my God, I've just left potential 12-month parental leave, sorry. And then, you know, now I'm like looking at jobs and I'm like, what's their parental leave policy? Whereas I just don't feel like for men they would even have to consider that. But it's even like changing careers and thinking, what am I going to do for the next 5 years? Do kids fit in that? It's just so much extra pressure. So sometimes that like beach boat lifestyle, sometimes I just want to keep going down that path.
Sounds good to me. I've got kids. I have to go down that
very
for a little while.
Did you? I mean, what was your story, Krystal? Like, when did you meet your?
So I because obviously had to grow up quite fast, I feel like I, you know, even at 18 was almost like what the 23, 4-year-olds are like now. I think back then it was, you had a bit more freedom and it wasn't as kind of scary to go out and whatever. So yeah, I had a good life, like a good partying life and stuff. And then I met my husband when I was 22, I think it was, and I was a hairdresser at the time, full-time hairdresser. So we met and we were basically best friends, like quite close friends at the start, and then we went overseas together. We went overseas for 5 months, and then I had always wanted kids very young, and I feel like a lot of girls that are my age now went through that stage when they were young, where they were like, what if I can't have kids? And it was just like this thing that you thought you couldn't have kids for no reason whatsoever. And I was like, I want to have kids by 25, by 26, and I was really adamant. And then I got to 25, 26, and I was honestly having a great time. I had my partner, but we were just loving life, really, really loving life. And then I fell pregnant at 27 on the pill.
Oh my God.
So life just made the decision for me.
But you wanted kids for so long.
I wanted kids for so long, but then I did get to this point of 26, 27 where I was like, oh, like, I'm good. You know, I'm not that stressed.
Yes.
When I have kids, I have kids. When you know, but I was in a relationship, so I guess there wasn't that much pressure. And then I fell pregnant on the pill, and I was just remember being at the doctor's like, how did this happen? And you know, he was like, do you want me to spell it out for you? And I was like, how? But how? It was, and I just kind of look at that and I think it obviously was just meant to be.
Yes,
it was just meant to be.
Yeah.
But I did. As stupid as it sounds, I cried about wanting to have kids for so long. And then when I felt pregnant, I cried about being pregnant. You know what I mean?
But
so
you cry all the time.
I do, I know. Yeah. But it was like, but because I think people go on about having, you know, when they're young, I want to have kids, I want to have kids, I want to have kids. But the second that you're pregnant, it's like
shit gets real.
It's not. You can't just take the top.
No,
it's not like a top. You just take it back.
No.
It's like this is it. This is real. Like this is actually happening. I can't pretend it's not.
Yes.
So it was scary. And my partner is 5 years younger than me. So he was only 21, 22, whatever, when we got pregnant. So you know there was that as well, because he was probably like, what the hell?
Did he step? I mean,
oh yeah. So
yeah.
I found out we were actually on a holiday, and he was going to propose on that holiday, but I did a pregnancy test the day we got there. So it was like, basically, he was like, well, now I'm not. Like, you know, like...
Because then it's like,
it's a bit much,
they found out they were pregnant, and then all of a sudden this ring came out of nowhere.
So then, you know, so he already had a plan, I guess, but it was just this big thing, because then he was in denial, because then for the next probably month or so, he was going to buy this one-seater car, and, you know, he wanted to roll with that for a while. He was like, no, I'm going to do this, and I'm like, okay, well... we're having a baby, so you can do that maybe after. But yeah, so it worked out well, but like I said, it was this thing that I wanted for so long, and I think I put so much pressure on myself to have this family so young, and I wanted to be this young mum. And then I felt pregnant, and I was honestly, you know, devastated for a couple of days. Because it was just like, it was just all happening.
Totally, and it's almost like the life that I knew is now going to be no longer.
That's what I
Into
mean,
this new chapter. And I'm curious, Steph, from your perspective as well. I mean, seeing, you know, Krystal and her journey. I mean, a lot of people do lose themselves, particularly when they become parents. I certainly did, and you're like, well, who am I? Like, you know, as you said, one day you're this, and the next day you've got all these responsibilities, and you're kind of, you know, your life is now no longer just for yourself and your partners. Did you like witness a change of, like, I don't know, identity? Did you witness a crisis? Like, I'm curious your perspective.
Were you in London when I felt pregnant?
Yeah, I was in London when I felt pregnant, and then I came back for Vienna's birth, and then went back to London, travelled for like another 5 months, and then I permanently moved back.
Okay.
But I think like the experience for me, like growing up, Krystal was always a mother figure to me. So I think to see her as a mother with Vienna, it was just a natural progression. And as I said, like, you have always wanted kids. Like, I remember growing up, you wanted the family, like you would talk about being pregnant, being a mum. So it felt really natural and a natural progression. If anything, I feel like you went throughout the journey, you're like, where you are now is back to where we both were when we were going to clubs when I shouldn't have been. So I was like 16.
It's true.
So I was 16 and you were like, however old, 20. Right. I mean, people know now, it's fine. I remember rocking up to the club when it was my 18th birthday and being like, oh, this is my ID. And they were like,
hang on a second.
But you've been coming for the last 3 years.
And she's like, well, now I'm legal.
So yeah, I think just the natural progression of seeing you, be a mum, it was natural. She was always a mother.
Which I think is why people were so shocked when I cried, because people were like, hang on, didn't you always want this? You know, like, this is normal for us, but for me, I was like, I don't know, now I don't know, you know?
The reality sets in. I want to hear about something really interesting you just said then, about the way that now we've sort of come a little bit full circle in that, like, we're a little bit more Miss Independent. And I know that you guys recently went on a trip overseas to Italy with your mum. Did you find the time away from your children as well enabled you to sort of go, okay, well, what, you know, who am I? What do I want? Has anything shifted for you since then?
Yeah, so I think my journey, so when I was pregnant with Vienna, the pregnancy was divine, it was amazing. And I was still like not pregnant when I was pregnant. You know how some people are like pregnant and that's it, it's all about the baby. Whereas I still went clubbing when I was pregnant. And I was just I was like, cool, I'm having a baby, but I'm still me. Then I had Vienna, and it was a shock. Like, it was a big shock. I had a terrible birth with her. It was, you know, that kind of thing. So it was just not what I thought it would be like. And then I think I kind of was like, okay, well, what am I doing? What do I do now? You know, what do I do with this kid? What do I do with this body that doesn't look like my body? I don't look like me. You know, all these things were just really different. And then when I had Harlow, I felt a little bit more like myself. So 2 and a bit years later, I felt a little bit more like myself. The 2 girls were easy. I think after Harlow was born, I think I kind of got back to being me a little. Then I had Avery, and that I feel like put me right back to the beginning. So having my third, I felt completely disconnected with myself. And a lot of people say the third one just slots right in, but for me it was...
But you even freaked out about having a
boy. Yeah.
Because we'd grown up as just two girls, and then...
And our mum, so just women.
It was kind of like natural progression, like the same thing was happening. I remember you like speaking to me on the phone being like, what am I going to do when I change his nappy? Like, I've changed to a boy nappy.
Yeah, I don't even think I'd seen like a little boy.
Little one.
And so when I had Avery's pregnancy was terrible. So I was sick for 35 weeks. So it was just this thing after another where I was like, I felt like I was losing myself. I felt like, all these things in my life were just very different at that point. The two girls was easy.
Okay.
I feel like after the two, like we travelled with the two girls, we went to America a couple of times, and that was I felt really independent even though we had the kids. But then throw that third one in and I felt a bit lost. So yes, going overseas, I've kind of got to a point, so Avery's 5 now, or he turned 5 just after we got home. Yeah. I knew, we had spoken about going away for years, we should go on a trip.
And it was all about getting mum to go to Italy.
Yes, exactly.
So we really wanted to get her to go because she'd never been.
So our mum...
Heritage.
Yes, so Italian, So our mum, obviously being a mum of 2, a single mum of 2 that had to work her whole life, still works like a dog now. We've never been on a family holiday ever, the 3 of us.
We did go on one family holiday. We caught a bus from Melbourne to
Queensland.
Yeah, to see family. That was like one of the only times. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like a memory that I was 9, so it was only a couple of years after they got divorced.
Yeah.
So we'd never done that. And it was kind of like, we need to do this. I think we need to take her, we need to go together. But also for me, I'm lucky because I have a husband who is hands-on. Yeah. And I think that, I try not to take that for granted. But I was like, well, I can go away. It's not going to be that big a deal, and the girls are older and they're self-sufficient, they're not, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And Avery's not at school, so it's that little bit easier to do what you need to do. So I knew that I needed it, and also I just wanted to spend some time with my sister and my mum, just us without the kids. I love the kids, but
different. They're not there, right?
It's different.
Yeah.
So when I went, I did feel, I don't know if my kids ever listen to this, they're probably going to have a heart attack, but I felt single. I felt like I didn't have kids. I wasn't worried about them, which is once again because of my husband, which I'm lucky, but I felt just free. Like we could just do whatever, It was probably our mum that was the hardest to look after. Because
she just freaked out.
I think she did freak out a little.
It was like really, I think it was just really eye-opening for her. Like we've been travelling before. We both went travelling together for the first time when I was 17.
I was 21.
And then I lived overseas, obviously. And then, we've always kind of been like that. And with our mum, every place we were just, oh my God, look at this. Like, how cool is the Eiffel Tower? And, we were just kind of forcing culture and like art and all this.
Because we're like, do you like it? Like, are you looking at it?
Yeah.
And
isn't it amazing?
She's like, like I think at one, like when we went to Paris first, just for a few days, because it was her birthday. So we went to Paris for her birthday. And there was a few times I think where I was like, Mum, the Eiffel Tower. Look at the Eiffel Tower. And she's just like, Krystal, I'm overwhelmed.
I can see it. She's like,
I can see it. And, I will cry. Like, if it's beautiful, I'll cry. Yeah. So I'm like, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you overwhelmed? And so she was kind of like, wow, like, relax.
But how was that for you, Steph? I mean, obviously being away together, I feel like even just take a beat, the fact that you hadn't even really had the opportunity growing up to have those moments together, those special moments where you're not working, you're not running off to do all the things. Like, did that
It was really great for me too. I think so. We spoke at the start of this year, and I think I said to you, like, we should go to Italy. We should take Mum to Italy. And even if you think about the last 5 years of me living in Sydney, we went through COVID, so there was a lot of time where I was like, removed from being with these guys and like with my family. So it was a great experience, opportunity to be able to do that, to spend time. It slotted back into how it just felt like, that's the thing with family. You don't feel like there's any time in between it. But it was great. Like, as well, I felt the same. And I think it's also because we went to Italy, which is our heritage. We went to Sicily, which is where our family's from. You know, and you're walking around there, and I'm, what do you call, like a universalist, like I believe in energy and all of those things, like spirituality. For me, being there was just that feeling, like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. So the whole
feels
thing,
like home.
Yeah, it feels like home.
It does.
Yeah. The people you see feel like family, even though they're not, because they all look like your grandparents, and hearing people speak Italian in the background. So it was a really, really great experience.
Like, I mean, you know, we fit in Australia, obviously, but we really do fit in there. Like, we just look like we're from there when we're there.
So then I'm wondering, Krystal, so like from that experience, you're away, you don't have the children. You said you struggled a little bit from an identity piece with Avery, and then you sort of, where did that leave you? Did you sort of start thinking, okay, you know, where did it leave you? Did you come back in a different mindset?
I did. I think I came back. So my son, a lot of people say that the son is a mummy's boy. My son is a daddy's boy.
Okay.
So, you know, it'll be like, where's dad? I want dad to put me to bed. So I haven't had that needy boy thing, right? So when I was away, you know, he didn't cry. They didn't cry for me. Like, the only one that kind of cried was my middle daughter. You know what I mean? I know, but not in a bad way. Like, it's just because they're so content with dad. Like, and that's amazing. I mean, there's been so many times over the past 5 years that I've snuck off to Sydney for the weekend to spend time with Steph. So when I was away, like I said, I loved it. I did feel, you know, fine, completely fine. And since I've come back, I think it took me, I think it's still taking me, I mean, we've been back for a couple of months, but it's hard, I think, to then go, okay, well, now do I have to give everything back to them? You know, do I have to do, you know, do I have to do everything again? And I mean, obviously, as a mum, you do everything as much as you can. But I think the fact that I was like, well, you guys survived so fine without me, you know? So I have been a little bit more, you know what, I'm going to go for a walk now. Right? And it's, you know, I don't need to explain myself. You guys are fine. I'm going to go for a walk. Or even just getting up that little bit earlier, and I go to Pilates in the morning. And I think before Italy, when I was going, I would rush home to kind of like get them ready and stuff. And now I'm like, I'm going to get home before I need to take them to school. But I'm not feeling that pressure of just having to, you know, they won't survive without me, because they will, that they did. And I think that for me, I'm a better mum, a way better mum, when I'm content in myself. You know, so much more. I think when I feel like I'm doing so much and I've lost everything about myself, I yell so much more in those moments. So yeah, I think for me, it's definitely, I feel like a better mum. Even though, you know, it's not as if I've taken a step back or anything. It's not like that. But, you know, I still put myself first, I think.
It's so, and it's like a different perspective, isn't it? And also with the knowledge of knowing that they're fine. Like, and often that's what we do. We suffocate them when we're like, oh God, you know, picking up everything, putting their socks on, when they can kind of do it themselves. But you're just got to get you out the door.
Exactly.
Because like, I've got to do it. Because if I don't do it, it's not going to get done.
That's right.
And so I think there's something so beautiful in stepping back and stepping away. And it obviously is a privilege that you are able to do that. But for those listening, you know, if it's a night away, if you can, or whatever it is, just to try and go, okay, family doesn't, like, they'll be fine. They'll figure it out without us.
Definitely.
But it's a testament to anyone, I think, just to think, you know, whether you're a parent or not, like, listening to you say that, like, as long as you prioritize something that feeds you and your soul, you're a better person to everyone. You're a better person to the world. You're a better person at work, and therefore a better mum to your kids, or a daughter to your mum, or whatever it needs to be. I think that, you know, the message is that you need to put yourself first to be a better person in the world.
I did, so with my Instagram, like my audience, that's something that I've spoken about for so many years, like putting yourself first. And it's funny because prior to going to Italy, and obviously going to Sydney, you know, is a couple of days off, but before I was going to Sydney to visit Steph, I hadn't had any time away from the kids. And I remember watching other people on Instagram, other mums who would have all these weekends away. And even though that's what I was promoting, I was basically like, you need to put yourself first. And I'd never done it. And I'd see other mums and they'd go away. And I remember thinking, oh, well, that would be nice. You know, I wish I could do that. This is obviously when my son was a baby. And then and now I've just done this full 360 and I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going to Italy for 4 weeks. See you later. But no, it has been the best thing.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like before I had kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just curious, I mean, with the podcast, we talk a lot to couples, mums and dads, same-sex couples, etc., and talk about sort of, how their dynamic, even as individuals, but also as a couple, has shifted. And I was, after having children, right, I was curious from both of your perspectives, and Steph, even from your perspective of looking in, what have been some of the challenges that you think that, parents, you may have faced yourself or whatever, when it comes to that sort of couple dynamic? And then I'm curious, Steph, because my sisters say this to me all the time. They're 6 and 7 years younger than me. They're single, living their best lives. Actually, one's has a boyfriend, the other one's single. She's living in New York. She's doing it a Sex and the City bitch. Freaking love life. But she goes, I've now seen what it's like to have a family, where she's got a lot of friends who are like, we just have a baby, and they're just, and she's like, you don't freaking understand how intense it is to have a child and to not sleep, because she saw it, right? You've seen it, and therefore she knows that the person that she ends up with, she's like, I'm not going to settle because I know that shit will not last. Like, I've seen how testing it can be. So I'm just curious, like, from both of your perspectives, on the relationship front, biggest challenges, and maybe even from your perspective, Steph, things that you'd be looking for, in a partner, knowing what it's like when you've got a family.
I think for me, so my husband is one of 3 boys, and he also comes from a divorced family. So he was raised just by his mum.
Right.
So I think we had the same upbringing kind of with our mums. So we both had a single mum, we both had a mum who worked, 50 hours a day just to put food on the table. So I think going into our relationship, he already had the respect for the woman, the mum, which obviously was to my favour. I think it was probably harder for me because I didn't grow up with a dad or an example of what a dad should be like. So, when we had our kids, so my kids will take his side and like laugh at his jokes, whereas I'm like, hey, I'm way funnier, there's things like that where
or like how they vote for the kids vote for the Bombers,
that's
and we vote for Carlton. So we're both like, why?
I'm like, why would you choose your dad? I don't understand that. So I think in my dynamic with my partner, it's probably me, I think, maybe who has struggled that little bit more, only because, like I said, I didn't have a male figure in my life. But we also parent very differently. So even though our mums are, the same, single mums, they parent very differently. And I think that's been the biggest struggle and dynamic since we've had kids, him and I. Just little things that he might yell at, I'll be like, that's fine. And then things that I want to yell about, he's like, why are you yelling? Those kind of things. And I think with just the girls before Avery, it probably wasn't as much of an issue. But since we've had our son, there's a lot of things. But this is the thing, I don't know what it's like to be a dad or have a son or a brother. So for me, it's very different. I don't really understand it. So I feel like I'm still learning how to be a boy mum, how to have a husband who has a son, how to, how to have a son who has a dad. It's different. I mean, maybe other people don't feel like that, but I feel like it's quite different for me to really understand. And also too, because I think we were such a close-knit 3 girls. Me, Steph and my mum, the 3 of us. It was just us 3 girls. So even just things like, when we just lived together without, before we had boyfriends and whatever, you'd get out of the shower and walk to the kitchen with no clothes on, right? Because it's just the 3 of you, it's just the 3 girls. Whereas then you have a husband, and then you have, a son, and it's all these things kind of need to change a little, It's, the dynamic has been different and challenging at times, but he is also, my husband is, like I said, very willing to appreciate the fact that I'm a mum, and he appreciates his mum. So I'm lucky in that sense.
Your values are like, and often it's always like it comes down to values based with the one, the relationships that are sustainable, similar values. And just on that, and I'd love to hear your perspective too, Steph, on that. But I just, as it came to mind, I remember when I was single, 29, moved back to Melbourne, back to reality, right? And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm looking for in a guy, because I had the list of the materialistic stuff, like he has to do this, this, you know, living
This
life,
all,
this, you know, all that sort of stuff. Have this job, blah, blah, blah. And then that didn't work out because guess what? I got him. I got the unicorn, and that was a shit fight. That didn't work out. So what am I looking for now? I don't know, right? And I ended up seeing a relationship guru, kind of spiritual, but person. And I was like, I'm just so lost. And she goes, okay, I want you to, rather than think about the materialistic things, which is what I was doing, I want you to think about how you want to feel and what essentially what values resonate with you and what comes to mind. And I'll never forget it. My three were playfulness, respect, and passion. She goes, right, take that out into the world and see who's ticking those boxes. Values, right? Like what do you value? And then, funnily enough, I ended up back with my very first boyfriend, and now we're married with kids and stuff. I've known him for forever, but but he ticked, at that point in my life, he ticked those boxes. I'm curious, Steph, from your perspective, having seen what it's like what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I think like Krystal and Aldo are a really good match, and like they like the same things. You both went traveling, like they're growing. You kind of grew up together, and then obviously have had kids, and everything's great. And
I just want to add too, this is really weird. People might think this is weird, but he reminds me a lot of Steph. So like my husband and Steph get along really well. And I think
growing up, when they first got together, everyone used to think that Aldo and I were brother and sister. But we both had like peroxide blonde hair at one point, so that's probably why.
But we do kind of look, we all kind of look alike.
Do you look like your soulmate? No? Don't you? Do you look like your
well,
partner?
I'm a Harvey and he's Aussie with blue eyes and
but
there is
like the structure.
Exactly. I still see what you're saying. I
feel like people morph into their partners. I don't know. When I meet someone new, I'm like, if I don't look anything like them at all, I'm like, you're not my soulmate. Sorry.
It's not even.
This is not gonna work. No, but I think from a values perspective, I completely agree. Like, it's really hard in this day and age with dating apps and dating in general to not be superficial, because you're looking at a picture and you can't tell anything about the person apart from a couple of silly prompts that they might put on the app. So it is really superficial and it's hard to move past that. But I think most definitely, as I spoke earlier about, you know, wanting to have a family and those priorities for me, what's really important for me in my home space is I love when people come over. And I remember I went on a date at one point a few years back, and I sat across from this guy who I was attracted to and everything, but he said to me, I hate when people come to my house. Like if we were going back for kick-ons, I wouldn't go. And then immediately in my head I said, this is not it. Like for me, I need someone who's, you know, really like welcoming to people, super open-minded, you know, and when it comes to, I guess, parenting and things, I've always said this loosely, but you know, someone that grew up with sisters, because you know that they're maybe a little bit more feminine or like emotionally intelligent, you know, someone that's close to their mum. Those things are, I guess, important when you're thinking about dating, and they're definitely things that I have considered, because I guess you just have to. And values, I think, are the most important thing that you connect on, right? And if you don't have the same values, then you're basically from different planets.
That's exactly right. And I think the one thing, I mean, I always scoff at, like, or laugh when people say, like, we had a baby to fix the marriage. I'm like,
that's the word.
Rewind.
Rewind.
You know, because it's the most testing time. So I think it's amazing sort of going into this new chapter of your life as well. I say new chapter because obviously you're still working through where you're going to live and things like that. But, and, you know, and as you're out in the wild meeting people, I think it's so great to have that perspective of like, not like the passion, but also like it has to, I know what this looks like, so I want to make sure that it's forever, and whatever that looks like. I know my sisters really took that away. For me, I didn't have necessarily anyone that I would look up to see what that was about, and I think that's why I found parenthood very jarring for me, because and I had prenatal depression when I was pregnant, and then I had postnatal, but also like identity crisis and things, because I was like, wait, is this actually what happens? Like, I was giving the heads up.
I was the same. I feel like I based what I thought marriage was off movies. Because I watched a lot of movies. Obviously didn't have, you know, a family that was together, so I couldn't see my mum or anything, and I would watch movies, and I still do, and I get lost in it, and it's like that then becomes what I think it needs to be. And I reckon that before I met my husband, or even when I met him, let's be honest, it was that. It was like, does he love me more than I love him? You know, will he do these dramatic things for me? You know, because that's what my I thought was normal from all the movies that I'd watched.
No, absolutely. It's like that, perspective and sort of seeing things, I guess, the beauty of being like the younger sibling, for example, you can kind of go, okay, I know what that shit looks like over the hill, so I'm going to make sure that I'm making big decisions.
Let her try it out. See how that goes.
I love that. I guess sort of, I'd love any final words of advice, for example, for in your perspective, Krystal, for those, parents who are sitting there going, look, I'm feeling like I'm losing myself a little bit in my identity, and I'm feeling like the family thing is just all consuming, and like, who the hell am I, and where do I, any tips, because you've just come off, a couple of months ago, come fresh back into your life with the kiddos, what's one tip you feel as though those people could maybe take away and consider if they're trying to kind of find themselves again?
I think it has to be a priority. It doesn't have to be number one if you cannot do that, but it has to be top three of doing something for yourself, whether it is just sitting in the car for an extra 15 minutes after you go to Safeway, Woolies, just to have those minutes before you go back inside, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's going to Pilates, where, if you can go on a trip, go on a trip. I think you really need to connect with yourself. I think that is so important. And, it's taken me however many years to kind of go, that's what's missing. Why am I so angry? Why am I yelling at the kids? Everything that they do is, everything that my husband's doing is annoying me. I want to kill everyone, and it's that kind of thing where it's like, you know what? Because I'm not doing anything for me. That's why. So I definitely would say you have to put yourself in your top three priorities, and also don't feel guilty if you do put yourself number one. I think if that's what it takes for you to be a better mum, a better wife, a better friend, sister, put yourself first. Doesn't mean that you're selfish, doesn't mean that you value them any less or you love them any less. It just means that you know what you need to do to be at your 100% so you can give them, 80% of that, for example, and then you're still left with something. You don't resent them for, leaving their socks all over the floor.
Totally. No, so well said. And Steph, I'm just curious from your perspective as well, like in sort of wrapping up, for those sitting there kind of, in a similar situation as yourself going, look, I'm still looking for the one, and, but I'm feeling anxious about that, and, time's ticking and all these things, and it's so out of my control, what do I do now? Like, are there certain things that you do, that you say, that you preach, that you remember, that keep you grounded? Any tips?
Yeah, I think I've really come into understanding that everybody's journey is their own. Like we all walk this earth, and some people have kids at 21, some people have kids at 40, and I think when you open up the conversation to a lot of people around you, they'll say 5 different scenarios of, I know someone who had a kid at 50, so it kind of gives you hope. I think the best way to stay grounded for me is just to really appreciate that my story is my story, and whatever is going to eventuate for me is going to be the best thing that was meant for me. And I think everybody should really sit in that space. I think at the moment in life, we've got all of everybody else's lives so readily available to us, which makes us feel that we're not on the right path. But if you strip all of that away and you sit within yourself and you're really happy with who you are as a person, you're grounded in that, and then that's your journey. And if it's with kids, without kids, with a partner or without a partner, you just have to be really happy with the fact that it's your journey. And to second what Krystal said, being able to prioritize yourself, whether it's exercising, therapy, getting your nails done, whatever it is, doing those sort of things, I think really help you come back into you, and therefore you're able to see and feel that things are going to be okay.
And I also don't want to undermine the fact that so many mums will be listening saying, I just don't have time for that. And I completely respect that, and like I said, it was a privilege to be able to leave my kids for that time. But I just think, like I said, find 5 seconds, just to breathe, just do 3 deep breaths, stay in the car for that little bit extra, go to school, pick up 20 minutes early just to sit in the car, really make the time for you, and don't feel guilty about it, because that's what's going to help with everything else.
Totally, and I think it is a shift in mindset. Like we all do sort of have the same hours in the day. We all have very different circumstances. I appreciate that, but at the same time, if someone's listening, going, I don't have the time. Well, okay, let's just be mindful that we need to try and carve out that time. and then you might be able to identify the pockets within your day that you can, right? So it's when if you've got a newborn, it's when your baby's napping. I know you probably want to nap too. Well, that's still, self-indulgence in a way. Like, just rest them, but don't feel like you have to do those 100 loads of laundry. Maybe sit there and read a book in that time. Like, you do what you can with the time that you've got. So I think fundamentally, if you've got that as a priority, like you're saying, you'll start identifying where you can sort of.
That's actually one thing that's changed for me since coming back from Italy. That I've really noticed. I was saying to Steph the other day, prior to I think going away with my mum and my sister, I would be like, I can't leave. Like, there's dishes. I can't leave the house. I will not be able to function if my dishes aren't done. Or there's washing. Since I've been back from Italy, and obviously Steph's here, so, I'm lucky because I get to do stuff with Steph in Melbourne, but I'll be like, oh, there's 3 loads of washing dishes, oh well, we're going to go get a coffee, and it's because no one is going to die if I don't do my washing right now, just giving that extra time to me to just have that little bit of freedom like what we felt in Italy, and spending the time with my sister, I'm happy to leave the washing, and it's funny because a month ago, or prior, I would feel like everything would fall apart if I didn't do that before I left.
Such a mindset shift.
I've
Love
got friends that are experiencing that as well, like from their new mums, and they're feeling like, I just don't have time for myself. And I have these conversations with them all the time. And I think it's about that priorities thing. It's about what you prioritize. So if you are going to prioritize the washing, and you are going to prioritize dusting or whatever it is that you need to do, then just sit in the fact that that's what you're prioritizing, and it's okay. And it's okay. Do that for 6 weeks, and then maybe have a little bit of a shift where you can sit in your car for an extra 15 minutes, go get nails done or whatever. I feel like we just need to be okay with the choices that we make. They sit in line with our priorities, because that's how we're okay to wake up and be happy and be good people for other people.
And we need to learn to not feel guilty. I think as women, I know a lot of men probably feel the same, but I mean, speaking to the women, especially my audience on Instagram, don't feel guilty. Just try not to feel guilty. And if you do feel guilty, just remember you're not hurting anyone by looking after yourself. If anything, it's the complete opposite. So I think, don't get the guilt. A lot of people ask me, hundreds of people ask me if I had the mum guilt being away, and I straight out, nah.
And I'm not going to be ashamed by saying
I didn't at all, not even a little bit. And there were moments where I was like, I didn't speak to the kids today. Should I feel bad? I honestly didn't. But as I said, my husband is 100% hands-on, so I'm lucky in that sense. But I've come back and they're happy and I'm happy and everything's still,
ticking along.
The sheets got changed while I was gone. I think that was my worst fear. I was like, you can't leave all the sheets for 4 weeks. They need to be changed. My husband was like, I'm on it. I've got it.
The things we think about. Love it. Well, thank you both so much again for your time. It's an absolute pleasure. I feel like I'm going to have you back on. It's great to chat.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Awesome.